Yeah, 360. Yeah, I'm like round and round and round we go. And where we stop, I'm like nobody knows. 360 degrees, 360 degrees. We give you what you want, we give you what you need. 360 degrees, 360 degrees. We tell the real truth, you know what I mean? This the breakdown, 360 degrees. We give you what you want, we give you what you need. We talking politics and news, and music reviews, as well as rap and TV. You know how we do, and music from some artists you never heard of. But when you hear them, you gon' show them some love. 360 degrees, 360 degrees. We give you what you want, we give you what you need.
Welcome to another episode of 360 Degrees, a component of the Urban Breakdown. Today's date, September 24th, 2017, but you'll get it on your podcast the following day and from there on. Mercer, what you got?
All right. Usually I try and keep this part of it short, but basically what I like to do sometimes is have a little segment called Which is the Most Pathetic? And now we have a lot of guests on, so this should actually make it a lot more vibrant this time around. Usually I have 3 things, but now I have 5 because so much stuff keeps happening throughout the week. So I'm going to go over 5 quick blurbs from the past week, and once I'm done with all 5, let me know what you think is the most pathetic. And some of them, they range from race issues to politics to Fox News hosts getting their feelings hurt. So I'm going to start with maternity nurses insulting black babies on Snapchat. There was a story that came out of Tallahassee about nurses at a naval hospital, basically, as they called it, mishandling black babies. So one of them had a picture of her sticking her middle finger up at a black infant and calling him a mini Satan. And another one was a little video of a nurse handling a newborn like a little rag doll and making it dance to rap music. So as of now, the nurses have been transferred, and there's going to be a full investigation going on. But you know how I feel about investigations, Blue. I'm not really confident about anything going on like that.
Remember, it's going to be a military tribune, so their process is a wee bit different. Sometimes they're saved, and sometimes they're hurt. They'll probably lose a strike, maybe do a little bit of time, and then they'll probably be back in the field. They may not be doing the same type of job, but they could easily cross-train them.
Yep. Or they could just do like the Catholic Church and just basically just transfer them someplace else, like Nova Scotia or somewhere like that.
Right.
So, the second one, a cop.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Before we skip that, before we move on, did anybody else see that video or hear about that news?
I didn't.
Yeah, of course.
Very interesting, though.
Yeah, I saw it. It was very disturbing to me, actually, because when you think of a nurse, you think of a person who's there to aid you, comfort you, take care of you, and especially to do that to infants. That angered me heavily. So for them to be transferred, to me, that's unacceptable. So you can go off and do something else to somebody else's kid.
Yeah, that's not transferring them. Really, is not a viable solution because the conduct is reprehensible, and when you have conduct that reprehensible, people like that need to go before some medical board, and possibly just lose their license. I mean, people have lost their license for far less. Right. We can't allow people like that to be handling infant children, because that's just the tip of the iceberg. you go from dancing to possibly abusing. So you have to really think about this, more, it's got to be a more broad thought process so that you can look at it and say, okay, what are the possibilities of this nurse actually at some point, if she wanted to, give this child something that could hurt him. Right. Physically, so yeah, I agree. I think, go ahead.
I'm looking at it as like, well, they transferring this nurse for doing something to a black baby. So where they transferred her to does not have black babies? I mean, cause if you're transferring them, that means you're saying like, okay, it wasn't because the baby was black, it was because of that particular child and not the skin color. Because if you transfer them somewhere else, then it's going to happen again, and you're basically showing her that, hey, you can continue doing it, but we're not going to suspend you, we're not going to fire you, we're just going to send you somewhere else to do the same thing.
Right. Absolutely. And that goes to, how deeply rooted this is in the minds of the people that's in control and in charge of these nurses. Apparently, to transfer them, as you indicated, that means that, we like it, we don't really mind it, but since you've been caught here, we'll just transfer you somewhere else. Just remember, when you get there, don't get caught doing it if you do it.
Right. Now, keep in mind, when I said transfer, that was an early version of the story, and I don't know if they have been transferred. I know they were taken off of active duty as far as what they were doing. Now, the transfer, that was an early version of the story. So I don't want to get too deep into that part of it, and I apologize for that.
No.
The word transfer shouldn't even been in the vocabulary for them. Like, even if they did change their mind and suspend them, that shouldn't have been the first thing they thought of when somebody is harmful to a child. I mean, that's a baby, an infant. So right. You do something and you get caught, even if it's an investigation to figure out why, if it's really because of the skin of the color or for whatever reason you felt like doing that, then we're going to suspend you until investigation is completed, not transfer.
Yeah, and like I said, that was an early version of the story where they said transfer, but then again, that's usually how these things usually work. They will usually transfer or suspend until they do their investigation, but it's still a disturbing story, and it just seems like in this day and age, more of these things are coming to light. Like, I don't think that a year or two ago you would have really had people acting that way, and especially not putting it on Snapchat. So thinking they're going to get a whole bunch of likes, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, they're in deep trouble. Like, I don't understand how adults can have that sort of, I don't even know what to call it, like that lack of awareness that what they were doing wasn't dead wrong, especially the baby.
Sure, ignorance. That's what you call it, ignorance. And there's no telling how long that they've been getting away doing it amongst themselves. Right. But just so glad, such as the president we have in office today, makes it okay to be ignorant, makes it okay to be chauvinistic, racist. So now that's why these people can turn to their social media pages and do their little ignorant deeds and think that it's cool, and it's not.
Right. It's sort of like the police officer that was on video, dummy. He was saying to this lady, I guess she was terrified that she had got stopped by the police, and he says, "Look, calm down, relax. We shoot black people. I mean,
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Don't worry about a thing. We shoot black people. Don't you know? Have you heard?" And so, to me, I mean, this guy eventually lost his job. But like you just said, how often has he done this and never got caught before they start having these recording devices? He's been saying stuff like this for years. It's not the first time he did it. And obviously, to me, this is police misconduct. And what they did is misconduct, and they deserve to be terminated. And I would like to follow the story to see kind of where this is going.
Right. Exactly. So, and forgive me for skipping ahead so soon. I keep forgetting there's so many of us on the line today.
Well, pause for a minute. Let me introduce everybody. Yeah. Today we have Mercer Prescott. We have Mercer Prescott is a political analyst for the show Politics, which is done on Mondays, usually at 7 p.m., in which he exposes all the trickery in this game called Politics. We have Najee. He's a famous 80s jazz artist who you can Google him and see a lot of his songs. He caters to the tenor sax. We have Tasha Scott. She is a famed domestic violence advocate, a photographer, a servant, a rape survivor, an ex-inmate, an abuse survivor, a speaker, a teacher, a mentor, and she has a great movement at www.luvisagift.com. That is Love is a Gift, but she spells love with the L-U-V, and I want you to check that website out. And she has a great movement coming along, as well as a great app that's coming out next month. And then we have Judith Louise. She is my Haitian counterpart. She is a famed social worker who has her own nonprofit called Ed and Win Health Services, who is doing big things in the community regarding HIV research, cure, and advocacy. And that's our speakers on the show on this episode of 360 Degrees, where we cover all aspects of whatever we feel like or whatever we please. Watch out now.
Okay. So, all right. Moving on to the, thank you, Blue, for the intro. And moving on to the next one. I do a lot of stuff on police, so I'm not a big fan of the cops, even though, and I will say I've never been arrested or even handcuffed in my life, but it doesn't mean that this stuff doesn't affect me directly, you know. So there was another shooting in Oklahoma where a cop shot a deaf man pretty much on his front porch. And what happened was his father, not the deaf man, but his father was involved in an accident, like a hit and run. You know, it was a single, like no one else was hurt, but the cop was following the description of the car and actually had the right car. Now, the man who was on his porch, his name is Miguel. I'm sorry, not Miguel. It's spelled Madgiel.
Miguel.
So, yes. Miguel Sanchez, and he was shot about 8:15 outside of his home. So what happened was Sanchez carries a metal walking stick, right? Mm-hmm. Basically like a homemade walking stick, because his neighbors said that he likes to take walks at night, but where he lives, there's a lot of stray dogs. So he keeps that metal walking stick to protect himself. He even had like a little leather strap at the end, right? The cop saw him with the stick and drew his gun and told him to put the stick down. Now, Mr. Sanchez is deaf, right? So his neighbors come out and they're screaming at the cop. He can't hear you. He's deaf. Don't shoot him. Don't kill him. And the cop, of course, shot him anyway, right? So the cop, of course, the irony of it is that the cop claimed that cop shoots a deaf man and then claimed he didn't hear all the neighbors screaming at him, don't shoot. Don't kill him. He can't hear you. He's deaf. He can't hear your commands, right? So, here's the thing about that, right? They're treating this as a homicide, but I don't really I have zero faith in the justice system, because their track record on this sort of thing is very, very low to non-existent. Unless, of course, you're a black cop who shoots someone, then it's really high. The cop that was sentenced to 40 years in prison for a shooting, which a child was killed, and they gave him 40 years. But you have other killings where, Walter Scott, getting shot in the back, and then on the video, the cop planting a taser on him. So it's either if the police department fails to prosecute, or the jury lets him go. So either which way, I don't have a lot of faith in this. But just the fact that the cop claimed he didn't hear all the other people shouting, "Don't kill this man. He's deaf. He can't hear you." How do you guys feel about that? Do you think this cop's story holds water? You know, the whole tunnel vision thing that they claim that he had. Tunnel vision, yeah, it's for your sight. Well, I mean, I've never been tunnel vision like that before.
Well,
so
let me say this. Let me say this. I mean, I'm probably the only person here that's been a sworn law enforcement officer. Mm-hmm. So I'm listening to what you're saying, and you know, I've approached many people. I have walked up on houses. I have walked up on businesses, walked up on people. And there are times when people will have things in their hands. Now, where it becomes an issue with me is if the item in your hand is raised up in a menacing way or threatening way. And, you know, at that point, then I have to make a decision. Mm-hmm. Now, it doesn't seem law enforcement have what they can do is they can take it up one level up. So whatever the threat level is, they can go up a little bit higher, one more higher. It doesn't sound like to me that this was a great use of force. I think this was a excessive use of force by law enforcement. And unless there's some proof that this man was charging at this particular officer with this metal cane that he made, I mean, just simply saying, hey, you know, you need to put that down doesn't seem to warrant that use of force to kill this man. I just have some difficulties. I mean, what I'm asking is, in this story, is there anything else to say that this man held up this metal pole and charged at this officer in any way threatening?
According to the police, yes. According to the neighbors, no. So we have that contradiction there. And I don't know if the cop was wearing a body camera. So the cop, the cop said that he, in his words, he ambled off the porch toward the officer, waving the pipe in his right hand. You know, but then again, he had his neighbors screaming, "He can't hear you." So he won't be able to hear the officer, and he's not really, he had developmental problems, so he doesn't read lips. Yeah. He communicates with pad and pen, you know. Yeah,
and I think the problem you got here, though, is that even though the neighbors were hollering, that just kind of compounded the situation, and it made it very confusing. You got an officer that's like, he's thinking his life is in jeopardy. You got people hollering, screaming, and at some point you get kind of tunnel vision, even with your hearing. And it's like you kind of lose objectivity because you're so focused on, you know, this man coming at you with this pole. The thing what he should have done, here's what he should have done. He should have just backed away from this man. There was no law that says, okay, you know, go ahead and kill him if you need to, or if you feel like you need to do it. You can move back and seek cover until you can get a better assessment of the situation. And it doesn't sound like he did that. And a lot of times they don't. It's like a rush to judgment, and they execute. And officers are not trained to do that. We're supposed to try to avoid, if it's by any means possible, taking somebody's life. And again, it doesn't sound like this officer did that.
Now, my thing is,
if he's a veteran officer, rookie. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, my thing is this, before I let the others respond, one thing I will say is this. If, let's just say he came to the house, talking about the officer, and Mr. Sanchez burst out the front door waving that pipe, that's one thing. Mm-hmm. But he was just sitting on his porch with the walking stick. So he wasn't doing anything. So he wasn't doing anything menacing until the officer approached him. And then I do get where it could be confusing if, you know, people are screaming at you, you know, while you're trying to concentrate on this one issue. So I do kind of, hearing it that way, I do kind of get that. But he was just sitting on his porch peacefully until the officer approached him. So like I said, if he burst out the house with the you know, waving that, you know, metal walking stick, that's one thing. But he was sitting there until the officer pulled up. So
I had something to say because I have friends that are police officers, and I have, you know, I do. I know a lot of police officers, and so I'm kind of like bittersweet with the whole thing that's been on the news. It's constant news reports about it. I just seen a news report about a cop abusing a white kid that was, I think, dyslexic, and he was just like not stopping, and the kid couldn't do anything about it. So I get everything that's going on, but my thing is, he has a stick. He doesn't have a gun. If he had a gun in his hand, I can see I'm going to shoot first and think later, because, a bullet can, he can push the trigger, and that's it for me. But he has a stick, so, like, he could have waited for backup, try to talk to the person. He wasn't coming at him, even if he had it up. Even if he was slinging it, like, you're in one area and he's in another area, so you had plenty of time to try to talk to him. He's not coming at you. He has a stick. He doesn't have a gun. Even if he had a knife. Because they teach you how to defend yourself other than just using your gun. You go through all that training.
I will say this about that, about the knife thing. I remember when I was a kid, real quick, about Eleanor Bumpurs. She was like an 80-year-old woman, and she attacked cops with a knife, and the cops shot her, right? Even an 80-year-old woman can kill a cop with a knife, especially if the cop's not wearing the vest.
But if the person is coming at you with the knife and you shoot, I get it. But if he's just waving the knife around and you are, like, at a distance, then you have time to communicate with that person before you just shoot them. Yeah. Even if you say put your knife down on many occasions, but if they're sitting still holding the knife up, you got time to de-escalate the situation before you shoot them. Just like he's holding a stick, he doesn't have a gun. A gun is one thing, because he could always aim it and shoot and don't think about it at you. So I get, they react so fast when it comes to gun. The problem with these officers, they have too many traumas that happen to them, so they react before they think about the situation. But it was a stick, for crying out loud. What can he, he can beat you to death, but you got time to de-escalate the situation, and they don't do that.
Right. All right. Well, hold on.
Go ahead.
Ms. Scott, she has, she's working with law enforcement regarding her new app. Let's plug that real quick. Or not. All right.
Moment of silence.
We'll just edit that out.
No, that's good comedy. We'll leave that in.
Okay. But my thing is this. I remember a story from Frank Serpico real quick. He talked about one of the cops that he worked with. They were on a bus, and a guy got a drop on his partner and slashed his face with a razor, and they still managed to take the guy in, unharmed. They don't really train cops like that anymore. I wouldn't say unharmed, just to say they didn't kill him. But from what I know, from reading articles, from like the Times and stuff like that, it's like they don't really train cops to de-escalate anymore. And the cities where they have switched to training to de-escalation as opposed to eliminating the threat, there are so much less police shootings, because I think a lot of the police shootings that happen are totally unnecessary, and that's my thing. I'm not saying that cops shouldn't carry guns, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't shoot if their life is in imminent danger. But like what happened with Justine Damon, she just approached the cops that she called, and the cop got spooked and shot her and killed her. Like, they just train cops. It's like they're a bunch of Don Knotts, shakiest gun in the West. Every time they see a shadow, they're shooting. And from what I know, and Najee confirm or deny, they just say, listen, your main job is to go home to your family. Right. So if anything's in the way of that, you know, and I'm being glib, of course. That's not they don't say it just like that. But but if there's any threats in your way, you gotta take out that threat, because your main goal is to go home to your family. It's not about, they teach the people like the community is your battleground, your enemy, like Fort Apache, like the movie Fort Apache Bronx, you know, back in the 80s, so, or 70s. So I think if there's a switch in training, we'll get a lot less Miguel Sanchez is getting shot, you know, unnecessarily.
All right.
I think that even if it's like a switch in training again, I think it was Judith. She was saying she had friends that were cops, and sometimes these guys, they're coming on the job with personal issues. That's a hard job. You know what I'm saying? You got personal issues. Your wife could have pissed you off the morning before. You know, you could have been raised in a racist household, and now you're an officer, and now you feel like that badge gives you the opportunity to go and do what you need to do and not get caught. But, I mean, it's unfortunate. These are the times that we're living in, and the people who are trained to save our lives are taking our lives.
Well, and my thing is this. There's always going to be a bad apple in the bunch. But a bad apple doesn't have to spoil the entire bushel. The problem is that these people are protected by top brass, and that's the main thing. That's the problem, because no one's going to be perfect. Yeah, you're going to have that guy who has, you know, who had an argument with his wife, and now he's out in the streets with a gun and a badge. That's going to happen, but the problem is, it almost seems like there's no consequence for it. Almost no consequence. You know? So.
Yeah, because it's not just protecting that police officer, it's protecting the entire system that exists. And so, you know, and please understand, it's officer discretion. And that's very broad, and I know it is. But officers have a lot of leeway in terms of what they can do or not do. You know, as a citizen, we can sort of, you know, talk about what we think should have happened, and maybe, you know, he should have done this or that. But until or unless you actually are in that situation where you're confronting a person like that, you really can't say what should have been done or shouldn't be done unless you have actually done it. You know, because these things can go from bad to worse very quickly. You know, if he has a metal pipe can kill you. Now, the issue again is whether or not he was using it to threaten the police officer. And I agree with the comment that was made earlier that, you know, perhaps he should have backed off, which is something I did say. I think, you know, you have to sort of, you know, you want to save lives as much as you can. You don't want to take a person's life. You know, I pulled my weapon out probably about 5 times, and I actually aimed it at individuals.
All right. The producer says that we've been on this subject for far too long. Let's move on.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Next up, Jimmy Kimmel rips Brian Kilmeade and hurts his feelings. If you don't know who, I know you guys probably know who Jimmy Kimmel is. If you don't know who Brian Kilmeade is, he used to be a sports analyst on Fox Sports.
Brian Kilmeade, like kill meat. I hate meat. I'm a vegan. What do you mean?
Oh, no, Kilmeade, his last name is Kilmeade. It does kind of sound like kill meat, but it's Kilmeade, Meade. He used to be an analyst on Fox Sports, and now he's on Fox News. So Jimmy Kimmel, long story short, Jimmy Kimmel had he doesn't do politics like that at all on his show. He's not a political guy. But he did come out in defense of Obamacare and pushing toward single payer because his son was born with a heart defect and almost died. And the doctors caught it, and they did emergency surgery on him, and now he's going to be okay. And he has to have 2 more surgeries as he gets older. So Jimmy just had a reflective thought, and he just said, you know what? I'm lucky because I'm rich. So I don't have to worry about these surgeries my son has. They just give me the bill and I pay it. Other people who have that same situation, who don't have insurance or just have crappy insurance, they may not be able to afford those surgeries, and those surgeries may bankrupt them. So he mentioned, so in a very emotional speech on the show, he mentioned that. And then he had a senator, one half of the Graham Cassidy bill, Senator Cassidy, I forget his first name. My notes are terrible sometimes. But he had that senator on his show, and the senator technically lied to his face about the healthcare bill, saying that it would cover people with pre-existing conditions, and it really does not. So Jimmy Kimmel mentioned it on his show, and of course Brian Kilmeade had something to say about it, and Jimmy Kimmel ripped into Brian Kilmeade and basically called him a phony little creep. You know, and my thing is, what made that part pathetic, not on Jimmy Kimmel's part, but on Brian Kilmeade's part, is that when you have Republicans, right, whether they're paid to be that way or whether they are just that way, they always miss the point. Whether it's on purpose or whether it's because they're paid to or whether they just don't get it, they always miss the point. So when Brian Kilmeade responded about what Jimmy Kimmel said, he didn't mention anything about Senator Graham lying to Jimmy Kimmel's face. He basically just defended, well, you know, because he called him a phony little creep, and he said, well, what do you say? I'm 5'10", 175 pounds. I'm sorry if that seems like little to him. He sounded like a little kid. Like if you crack on a little kid, and the kid is, you know, he's like, well, you know, if you call a little kid a dummy, like, I'm not a dummy. I know how to read. That's how it kind of sounded to me. But the thing about it is that he totally missed the point of why Jimmy Kimmel was getting on his case. So I don't know if you guys saw that clip or if you guys watched Jimmy Kimmel at all, but what do you think about that as far as Kilmeade's response and missing the point of the whole thing? And do you think it was done on purpose, or do you think he just really didn't get it?
I just think he's an asshole and wants attention. Who even heard of his name until he spoke?
Basically.
I mean, really, I was saying, really, I haven't even heard of his name, so I really don't even care.
and that's kind of the point that Jimmy Kimmel was making, is that Brian Kilmeade wants to be, he rags on Jimmy Kimmel as being part of the Hollywood elite, but he says that Jimmy Kimmel said that Brian Kilmeade wants to be part of the Hollywood elite, but nobody will hire him. And that he
like nobody knows you.
But his, I mean, and that's how people get famous sometimes, by, you know, ragging on somebody more famous and then getting that name out there. But, you know, I'm pretty sure, I'm giving it some airtime just because of the bigger point about the healthcare issue. But I'm pretty sure in 2 days, no one is going to remember who Brian Kilmeade is unless they watch Fox News on a regular basis. And most of those people are already dying because the average age of the Fox News viewer is like 64 years old. So, but anyone else about the Brian Kilmeade thing?
It's on the mic like that. Nah, you know, that's all that was. Jimmy Kimmel actually did him a favor by getting him some Google searches, making them go up higher in the rankings when you look up stupid ass motherfuckers. And my mama said, you know, this is like Drake, everybody says it, you only give them power when you give them attention. I've never ever heard of this Kilmeade guy until you mentioned it just 2 seconds ago. About 2 seconds ago, and we'll never mention his name again. All right.
And I figure it like this. I guess that was Kilmeade's only recourse, was to go that way, because he really didn't have an argument to stand on. Because it's not like Senator Graham didn't lie to Jimmy Kimmel's face on national television. It's not like he didn't do that, because he did do that. So Jimmy Kimmel is right in that respect. And Brian Kilmeade was just doing his normal Fox News thing of just missing the point, attacking someone as a Hollywood elite, you know. But when Jimmy Kimmel hit him back, he really had nothing to say. All he said was, well, I'm not little, I'm 5'10". And that was his only response. So he totally, like I said, either missed the point in a Fox News way or just really just doesn't get it. So before I go on, anyone else had anything else to add?
Nah, who's Jimmy Kimmel again? No, I'm joking.
No, we know Jimmy.
You happy on that one. Now,
wow, we could have talked about Usher for all that time being spent.
What's going on with Usher? Did he resolve his herpes issue?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Get me caught up with that. Forget the other stuff.
So, all right. But anybody who's listened to the show before knows that I'm not a big Hillary Clinton fan. I have friends who like Hillary Clinton, but like her for the right reasons. I mean, it's not like she hasn't done anything positive in her career, you know. And most of my friends who love Hillary stick to that point of it, and that's perfectly fine. I leave them alone. There are some people who I call the Hillary drones, and those are the ones who basically defend Hillary even when she's wrong. So basically, I follow Twitter. I don't know why, because it annoys the living hell out of me, because people on Twitter are just out of their minds sometimes. And Hillary wrote the world's lamest mystery novel called What Happened. It's basically like buying a mystery novel and then opening up the first page and it says, the butler did it. The end. That's basically, we already know what happened. We know why she lost the election. I'm not even going to go into that in any detail. But I didn't think the book was going to do well. And if I had bet money on it, I would have lost. It sold 300,000 copies in its first week. But
shame on you for not thinking that book was going to do well. What is wrong with you?
Well, and like I said, you know, her book was called What Happened, and like we already know what happened in great detail. But then again, people may not follow this stuff as closely as I do. So maybe they really did want to know what happened. And they've been putting out excerpts of the book for the last 3 weeks, which is why I also didn't think it was going to do all that well. But I was dead wrong, and that's why I don't run a publishing house. Because if I did, I'd be out of business in a month. So, but on Twitter, all these Hillary drones, and like I said, the ones who defend her even when she's wrong, they saw this as some sort of victory over Trump, and they were like doing the @Donald Trump or hashtag Donald Trump, and like, yeah, you know, Hillary sold all these copies of her book, and I'm like, you do know that Trump is president, right? That Hillary lost. Yeah, right. She won the popular vote, but that doesn't mean anything because it's the Electoral College that gets you to win. And I don't understand the whole thing with the Hillary drones. And I think that they're actually, along with Hillary, I think they're lessening the Democrats' chances of taking back the House or the Senate in 2018 or 2020.
I can assure you right now, the Democrats, they don't need any help with that. I'm a Democrat, but I just find them extremely lazy. I don't think that, that they go out and fight as hard as they should. They just kind of take the relaxed, like, in politics, you have to be a pit bull. I'm sorry, you have to be a shark. You need to be, and at times I felt like when she should have been aggressive, she wasn't aggressive. Just like a lot of the times the Democrats, they kind of sit back and, like Silly said on The Color Purple, I'm just going to see what color comes on the wall next.
Right.
We need to get out there, period, hands down. We need to get out there and make it happen.
Yeah. And my thing is this. You had Bernie Sanders, who was an independent. And after the primary, after the election, I should say, I changed to independent. I was a Democrat. I've been a Democrat since I was 17 years old when they let us register to vote. And I've been a Democrat since I was 17. Mm-hmm. So for over 30 years, I've been a Democrat. And now I switched to independent. Because I have that luxury, because in North Carolina, it's open primaries. So I have that luxury. If you lived in New York, you wouldn't have that luxury. But my thing is this. Bernie is out there in the streets. He's debating people. He's doing whatever he can to get this Medicare for All bill passed. And then you have Hillary writing books and making money and making super PACs and doing all the stuff that lost her the election in the first place. So the fact that her drones can't see that, I know she doesn't have the money to pay all these people on Twitter. So I know they actually believe in that. But Hillary's book aside, do you guys think that what Hillary is doing is going to help? I mean, I know we've already spoken about it a little bit just now, but for the rest of you, do you think it's going to help in 2018, in 2020? Do you think it's going to hurt in 2018 or 2020?
it ain't gonna do shit because the Democrats ain't a contender right now. Real talk.
And the sad part about that is, and I think you're right, Blue, they're really not, because their base is divided. Donald Trump, technically, out of all registered voters, not just the people who voted, but all registered voters, only had about 25% of the vote. Half the country didn't even vote at all, right? So if those same 25% shows up in 2020, provided Trump isn't taken away in handcuffs, he'll win again. It's almost a shoo-in. It's almost, I joked about it on Facebook, I'm like, if you had long-term plans, cancel them. Because this is going to be, unless he goes to jail, this is going to be an 8-year thing. Because he's going to win re-election, not because I want him to. But it's just the way it is, because it seems that the Republicans, no matter what, they're always united, because there's no logic in what they do. So they just run on pure emotion.
And let me tell you why. Mm-hmm. If you remember, I don't know what education system looks like in, no, I lie, I do know what it looks like in the North. Anyways, education system in the North and the South, you know, they're very different, but also very similar. And what you're taught while you're young, either by your parents or by your school systems, locks you into a certain mind state. I think the biggest argument for that would be the concept of Christianity. We're taught to believe in something that we can't put our eyes on, we can't touch, we can't see, we can't smell, we can't taste, and yet we wholeheartedly believe every aspect of it as it's been taught to us versus seeking the truth for ourselves. So the same happened with our educational system, the way they teach us about the presidential system and the different branches of legislation and the Senate and the House of Republics and things like that. Because we're so locked into it so early in age, even years later when you're grown and you're supposed to know better and all evidence tells you to know better, you're still locked in that mind state.
Yeah, exactly. So before I move on,
so we can't fault them for being who they are, because that's the way they were programmed.
Right. But the problem is then you have that cognitive dissonance, because even when they're presented with the truth, they just won't accept it. So they'll try and even go as far as to alter reality, at least the reality around them, to make what they believe in true, even though evidence says that it's not. Kind of like global warming, you know. Yeah, we had, what do we have, like 6 hurricanes? You know, and we may even get another one. Was it Maria just hit Puerto Rico again? All of Puerto Rico's without power, and now there's a dam that's about to break, which could potentially kill another 70,000 people if they're not evacuated. So global warming doesn't create hurricanes, it just makes them stronger. Because it's not like we've never had 5 hurricanes before. We just never had 5 hurricanes this strong at the same time. So these 500-year storms are becoming 2-year storms. But you still have people who are just on Twitter like, oh, it's just weather. It's going to happen anyway. Yeah, but we're making it far worse. When they presented with that truth, they start to crumble, and then they just rebuild their own reality around it. And that's kind of what I feel that the Hillary drones are doing. You know, they're shaping their own reality, and that's going to be dangerous, because if they keep doing that, we're not going to win in 2018 or 2020. So it's sad but true. Did you guys have anything else to add before I move on to the last one?
No. We don't.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
We got kind of lost in the sauce. That one was kind of long, Merc.
Last one. And I know I'm in the minority on this, but I do feel bad for Melania Trump. I do. Because Melania...
I don't feel... She wants the lifestyle. That's what they have to get.
Choices and consequences. You know what I mean?
No. Here's why I feel bad for her. Not for her being with Trump. That's all her fault. You know, she wanted that sugar daddy and she got it. I'll talk about being first lady. That's my thing, because that she did not want. She did not want to be first lady.
Yeah, she didn't sign up for that. She signed up to be a sugar baby, and that's what
yeah, and that's what she got, and now she's the president's wife, and she's just like, oh, I can't do a good Eastern European accent, but just imagine this is bullshit with an Eastern European accent.
Oh,
gosh. Now, my thing is this, right? I am not really signed on to the whole thing that first ladies need to do anything, because most first ladies are not politicians. Like Hillary had that political ambition. Michelle Obama had that social ambition, you know. So even if you have someone like, not Barbara Bush, but Laura Bush, who just doesn't really do anything, she's like a potted plant, that's fine, because you're not a politician, you're just the president's wife. So whether you take up a cause or not, that's fine. I have no issues with that. But Melania's cause is absolutely ridiculous. It's not ridiculous on its face. Her thing is anti-bullying, right? That's the cause that she chose to take up. It's ridiculous because her husband is the #1 bully in America. And that was even before he became president. So you figure Melania gets up at the UN and gives an anti-bullying speech, one that I will give her credit for. She didn't steal from Michelle Obama, so that's a first for her. But I was trying to find out if it happened before or after, but you figure you just give an anti-bullying speech, right? And then your husband threatens to destroy another country at the UN, right? And then days later, he goes on to bully Colin Kaepernick and bully Steph Curry for not giving a decision about going to the White House, and then says, well, your invitation's rescinded. Yeah, he wasn't going to go. Because if he was going to go, he would have already said yes. You know, that's just, you're married to the #1 bully in America. Right. So why would you choose anti-bullying as a cause? Because it just makes you look like a jackass every time you go up on that stage and talk about not being, anti-bullying, and then you have to look at your husband to make sure he's not going to run up on you and sock you in the face if you say something wrong.
Because she knows how it feels like to be bullied, because she was bullied by her husband. So she wants to speak up on, she's still married to the big bully, but she understands what it feels like to be bullied, because I'm sure as he bullies America, he has bullied her as well.
Yeah. But like I said, in that case, I don't feel sorry for her, because, I mean, it's not like he hadn't been married, 2 times before that? And it's not like he didn't marry his mistress. So it's not like, okay, he just misunderstood. You know, it's just basically she knew she married a monster, but she knew he was rich, so she figured, I don't have my green card yet. Oh, this would be easy. I come out there, I shake my ass a little bit, I get in his bed, I get married, I get my green card, I'm good. And now she's
bullies. I think what they describe him as a narcissistic. They always feel like they can get away with things, and they always can justify everything that happens in their lives and get that other person to remember. True enough, she was the mistress. But again, coming from a female, they always feel like it will be different with them, until they realize that it's not. He is who he is, regardless of who is in the picture.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's an excellent point. That speaks to an app that Ms. Scott is working on. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that as we transition to our next segment? All right, and there we go again, dead air. All right.
Who are you referring to talk about this app? I mean, every time you mention the app, no one sees. What? The what?
Ms. Scott, can you tell us about your app, which it's a perfect segue for that.
Awesome sauce. Yes. So I'm working on a domestic violence app. So this app is actually going to be able to help law enforcement and the survivors be able to communicate effectively and safely. So the survivor will be able to communicate to law enforcement the type of weapons that the abuser has, if any at all, drunk versus high, how many entrances, exits, how many people are in the house, where the actual survivor is located in the house. But the biggest thing is the app will safely give the authorities permission to enter into the home. being a survivor myself, I can firsthand say when cops came to my house, my perpetrator was right behind the door in his hand squeezing the crap out of my side. Like, if you give this man permission, I'm going to do some worse damage to you. So with given permission to enter into the home through the app, I'm just believing that everybody will be able to get out of that situation safely, because we do know, I'm not a big fan of the cops, but when we need them, we become fans of theirs, and they actually lose their lives just as much as survivors do when answering domestic violence calls.
Right. Yes, I will agree with that.
Wait,
having been on domestics, so.
I have a question regarding the app. What if you don't have a phone in hand? Like, how are you supposed to... And I say this because being a survivor of domestic violence, the first thing that they snatch out your hand is your phone. So
that is very true. And so with that, I can't say right now because this part is confidential, but there will be a way that you can actually get what you need as long as you're wearing a certain item on your body.
Gotcha. Okay.
And, I would think, too, though, just thinking about what she just said, once that app is activated, you don't have to disclose, KFC secrets, but just like, once that app is activated, it almost sounds like to me it would automatically, like, sort of alert law enforcement that there's something going on at this location. It's like it's got some type of GPS ability to identify where this user is using this app from. So, I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, I don't know what you got going on, but just if that's something that you think you can implement later,
Oh, no, the location, that was the first necessity. We need to be able to locate you in order to help you. So that location part of it was the very first thing that was implemented into the app. Because and where you're located actually on the property.
Right.
Because that's go ahead.
No, I was saying, so I'd imagine, like, let's just say you had a situation where you had to leave the home, right, for fear of your life, that this way they could still find you.
They can still locate you, yep. Wow. And you will never be able to turn off that location. We will be able to track you. It will not be able to. And all information will be hard embedded. All of your court documents, secret diaries, every part of this thing. Because my abuser, this joker was an engineer for 28 years. I had everything for court. When I got to court, he successfully erased data from my phone, my laptop, everything. And I was standing in court looking like, say what?
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so this app came in with my personal story and other women, men, young adults around the world. We put together this app. I went out in the streets and I pulled people from the streets. I went into domestic violence shelters and asked questions, so I know what to put in this app.
All right.
Yeah. Outstanding.
Sounds like it's going to work.
Yeah.
We need to do something. Do something with these fools.
Because unfortunately, sometimes, domestic violence, unfortunately, and hopefully one day it'll be a thing of the past. But then again, that's like saying racism will be a thing of the past. So anything that we could do to help deter it, please go for it,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because a lot of officers get killed on domestics, and it's very unfortunate. I've been on quite a few of those domestic calls, and I had one in particular where, it's the same people every freaking weekend. And so on one of the calls, I went out and the lady had called, so the sheriff department also came. Once we arrested the guy in the house, the woman turned on us. I mean, she saw us as a villain, but you called us to come and get your husband from beating the hell out of you. Now you want to, attack us because we have to kind of rough him up some just to get him out of the house because he's resisting. And but a lot of times those domestics they go south very quickly. And
they do.
For you ladies to have survived, I'm very glad that you have a story that you can tell, because a lot of women don't have that. They're deceased at the hands of the person that should have been protecting them. But so that app sounds like it's going to be a great asset.
Yeah, I'm excited. And guys, stay tuned and help, push the word out. That's very important. Push the word out. And we will be fundraising for Empath 360 from October all the way through March 2018. Shameless plug, shout out to Empath 360. And it's just one of those things that we're stronger in numbers when it comes to something like this.
Well, First things first, there's no such thing as a shameless plug. Any publicity is good publicity. And
that's right.
Blue, if you have any information, give it to Blue. And I know some people who do work in the community. So, yeah, I can push that information to them and have them spread it around.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely will. Definitely. And mind you, also, we're going to be doing a Love Fest tour. We're going around to all 50 states. So if anyone knows anyone that has a venue that would love to host us, want to be able to come out, talk to the survivors. I'm a licensed life coach, motivational speaker. I want to be able to teach you about self-investment, because that's how a lot of these abusers come in. They play on that mentality of low self-esteem, abandonment issues. So we want to be able to pour in so that you're able to pour out and be able to get exactly what you're supposed to have in your life, instead of picking up more broken fragments in other people.
Right. So
all right.
Blue, I know we're coming. I know we're coming close to time, but
something to summarize.
Yeah.
Unless you have something else to say.
No, but one thing, and going back to the original thing, out of the 5 things that we talked about today, the maternity nurses assaulting black babies on Snapchat, cop shooting deaf man, Jimmy Kimmel rips playing kill meat Hillary drones, and then Melania's hollow anti-bullying speech. So which one did you guys think was the most, I know it sounds trivial because all these are also issues, but which did you think is the most pathetic out of those 5?
I think the nurses, what they did to those innocent children is absolutely the most pathetic thing I've heard.
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
the death of a deaf man who posed no threat to anyone except for maybe a roach or a dog that was going to get in his ass is the worst one.
Yeah. I was going to say the cop shooting the deaf man, but I think I have to go with maternity nurses, because they're picking on defenseless babies who can't defend themselves, who don't even know.
I wish they'd pick on me.
So.
Yeah, because innocent children, I mean, first of all, to take the picture or in the video, put it on Snapchat, that's a violation of that child's rights to privacy. Yeah. So those HIPAA laws has been broken, and so they got a whole slew of reasons to fire these folks. And
well, the Ten Commandments was broken with the deaf man. So I mean, what's bigger, the HIPAA, a law written by man, or the commandments, a law, a testament of God?
Hey, well, look,
okay, just because no one picked your deaf man.
You're preaching to the choir, Blue. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. But I mean, the fact is, I mean, we have laws, and all the laws, as you know, come from those laws. So, children, we need to protect them. And I would be just as adamant about this if it was a white baby, because babies are babies. Yeah. And so it's not about a race per se, but it's just the idea that you could take an innocent person, you're a grown person, and you're picking on a little innocent child just because you got some preconceived notions about people that if you take the time to really understand, you'll find there's some folly and foolishness in everybody, regardless of race. I mean, it doesn't matter. But they're brainwashed, so what can you say?
Yeah, exactly. All right. So, and that's all I had, but did you guys have any closing thoughts?
Stay woke. I wrote a song about it. Y'all want to hear it?
Well, thank y'all for inviting me. I enjoyed.
Oh, that's
I would
not a
say,
problem. Go ahead.
As a closing thought, is that we need to be the best people we can be under whatever circumstances we find ourselves in. And if we can't make the world better, we shouldn't make it worse.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I like that. I think I'm going to put that on Facebook.
Yeah, I like that. That's dope. That's dope.
Yeah. And then when you quoted, put Najee, and then in parentheses, not the jazz guy.
It is the jazz guy. This is the guy from the 80s who sung that song.
Well, if you're going to quote it, just put Adam Perkins, a.k.a. Najee. So that'd be fine. Yeah, but it's been great, though. I had a great time, with you guys. Really did.
And you guys are welcome back anytime. So.
Okay. Awesome.
All right.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for being with us. Watch out now. All right, and that concludes another episode of 360 Degrees, a component of the Urban Breakdown. Subscribe via iTunes, via Google Play, and if you have Echo Alexa apps, you can use it via an app called TuneIn. Listen and subscribe now.